Tonight on the Late Debate, finally freed, Nazanin, Zaghari, Ratcliffe and Anusha Ashari fly home after the government pays off its debt to Iran. We'll be talking to one of the MPs who campaigned for their release. Also on the programme, the disgraced former council leader plotting a political comeback in the East End.
He clearly has no shame. He's clearly putting himself forward again, and we just need to beat him.
After years spent in Iranian prison cells, Nazanin, Zaghari, Ratcliffe and Anusha Ashari were finally given the news they desperately craved this week. The government has settled its £400 million debt and the pair were finally flown home. The story of Nazanin is well known, but Anusha's tale is equally moving. In Iran they were prisoners, but to their families in London they were always hostages. Nazanin, Zaghari, Ratcliffe and Anusha Ashari arrived back in the UK in the middle of the night. Their release followed a tense 48 hours.
We weren't sure and right until the last minute, so it's been very emotional, but also a really happy moment for the families, and I'm pleased to say that both Nazanin and Anusha are in good spirits and they're safe and well back here in Britain.
Nazanin, Zaghari Ratcliffe's husband Richard mounted a high-profile campaign to try to win her freedom. But for a while, Anusha Ashari's story was largely unknown in this country. He was held in Iran for almost 5 years after the regime accused him of spying. In 2019, he and his family decided to go public. Anusha spoke from prison.
Okay, I am Anusha Ashari calling from Hall 12, Wing 7 of Evin Prison.
The family enlisted the support of Amnesty International as their frustration grew.
We've never once heard the PM actually mention his name, even say Anusha Ashari.
It was the settlement of a 40-year-old debt relating to the supply of British tanks which finally secured the release of the two dual nationals. In the Commons, Anusha Ashari's MP wanted to know why it had taken so long.
It has been over 1,650 days since Anusha was detained, and these are days of his life that cannot be returned to him.
But in the early hours of this morning, Anusha Ashari's long ordeal was finally over. Well, Janet Davey, the MP for Lewisham, who's Anusha's MP, joins me now. Janet, have you spoken to him today?
Good evening. Yes, I have spoken to Anusha today. It was an absolute joy and pleasure to speak to him. We got cut off a few times just because of connection. But yes, I spoke to him and he was just full of admiration and thanks and appreciation. And for me, it was just so nice to welcome him back to the UK and really just to say how much his family had missed him and how great they've been in championing his cause.
How is he?
One of the things he said was that that he hopes that when he wakes up, he doesn't wake up in a cell, basically. So he was saying, obviously, there's going to be a period of adjustment for him. And at the moment, I'm sure he's still pinching himself just to make sure he really is home. So it will take some time, quite a lot of time, probably for the whole family to readjust. And I've just said to him, you know, take your time and spend time with your family. And he's really optimistic. He says he knows it will take time, but he thinks he's going to have a quick recovery.
It's been an emotional rollercoaster the last 24 hours for everyone, including people like you.
Yeah, it's been going on actually for over 2 days. When we first got a glimpse that they may be being released, and it's been really intense. And everybody's just been on edge, basically. And there was a real period of time where we knew that they were at the airport in Iran, but we didn't want to make a big public shout about it because actually they weren't on the aeroplane, they weren't out of Iranian airwaves, and we needed them to come closer to Britain, and then we could really be really pleased and know that it was actually going to happen as well.
Now, we heard you in the Commons yesterday critical of the government and the time it took to pay off the tank debt. Why do you think it took so long?
So, I mean, for Nazanin to lose 6 years of her life and for Anusha to lose 5 years of his life, that's absolutely atrocious. And they'd been told right from the start this was due to the IMS debt that was needed to be paid back to Iran from our country. It shouldn't have taken so long. It was their money. It needs to go back to them. There's lots of arguments that would be given about various sanctions that were in place, but it could have been given back through humanitarian aid. It's been achieved now, but I don't see why that couldn't have been achieved sooner.
Do you think Liz Truss made the difference?
I think there's a few things that have made the difference, actually. I think that Richard's the most recent hunger strike had made a difference. It really raised the profile of the case. When we had the last Westminster Hall debate, the cross-party support was absolutely huge. The government couldn't keep on ignoring the fact that they had responsibility to pay this debt back and to get on with the job. I think that Liz Truss made that her priority when she got there, and that is something I'm grateful for and the family are pleased about. But actually, it's still the government that should have acted sooner and a lot quicker.
Do you think Liz Truss has been a better Foreign Secretary in terms of Anusha and Nazanin than the previous one?
I think how we have to see it is that she's achieved something that wasn't achieved and should have been achieved earlier. And we're also very grateful for all of the civil servants, everybody that's worked within the Foreign Department, for what they've achieved for Anusha and Nazanin as well.
What difference does a backbench MP make in a case like this?
Well, I've been, and so has Tulip, Richard's MP as well. It's about raising the profile. It's about campaigning. It's about making sure that the public and the government know that these are real people's lives. They're real families. These are people that have emotions and feelings. And what I often do is I say, imagine if this was your family. Imagine if this was your father or your husband. And I always try and get to people's sense of compassion and humanity and give people a name and make it very real. So actually we fight for real people.
I guess you're hoping to meet your constituent very soon.
I'm really looking forward to meeting Anusha. I've spoken to him a few times before. I spoke to him today, and we're probably going to meet quite soon. OK, Janet, lovely. Thanks very much for coming in to talk to us this evening. Now, in May, every council seat in London is up for grabs, and some contests are more controversial than others. In Tower Hamlets, the former mayor Lutfur Rahman is fighting to regain control despite his 5-year ban from standing after a court found him guilty of corrupt practices.
Inshallah, on the 5th of May, we will make history again and we will take back the mayoral deal which is rightfully ours.
In the East End, Lutfur Rahman is Labour's worst nightmare. He's a former Labour councillor who was twice elected mayor of Tower Hamlets. But his last victory in 2014 was overturned by a court after he was found guilty of corrupt and illegal practices. He was banned from standing for public office for 5 years. Now he's planning a comeback.
Although he was disqualified from office, many of the people who support him will have thought that was unfair or wrong. So it will be a big struggle between Labour and Lutfur Rahman, now standing as an independent again.
Rahman's power base was the borough's Bangladeshi community. The election court, which found him guilty, concluded Muslim voters were put under spiritual pressure. They were told it was their religious duty to vote for Rahman. His political opponents say that kind of politics has no place in Tower Hamlets.
I will tell people what we stand for, what our policies are and what we will wish to do. I'm not going in some kind of hideous Dutch auction to various community groups and say we will give more to your community than anybody else or more than another party. I think that is an obscenity in politics.
In 2014, Labour's John Biggs was defeated by Rahman, but when the election result was overturned, Labour won back the town hall and Biggs has been mayor ever since. Now he's up against Rahman again.
He clearly has no shame. He's clearly putting himself forward again, and we just need to beat him. I think across the community in town, people want to move on from the period of controversy and headlines for the wrong reasons.
Are you worried about him?
I never win elections by not taking my opponents seriously, so in that sense you have to think hard.
At a rally this week, Rahman was endorsed by the former Labour Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone.
If I was a millionaire, I'd be paying for his campaign.
We asked Lutfur Rahman to speak to us, but have had no response. To discuss the upcoming elections, I'm joined by 3 council leaders. For Labour, the Hammersmith and Fulham Council leader Steve Cowan. For the Conservatives, the Westminster City Council leader Rachel Robertson. And for the Liberal Democrats, the Kingston-upon-Thames Council leader Andreas Kirsch. Welcome all of you. Steve, you surprised to see Ken Livingstone endorsing Lutfur Rahman?
It's really disappointing, and it's disappointing for the people of Tower Hamlets, who deserve better than someone who has those charges of corruption against him. John Briggs has really done a lot to transform Tower Hamlets, giving universal food to all school children. And that's the type of difference that he's making, and it's just not acceptable for Ken Livingstone or Luther Rahman to try and get in the way of that.
Is Labour worried?
No, never worried. Always focused on delivering for the people that they're elected to do. And that's exactly what John Biggs has done consistently, which is why I think he stands a chance of winning. But he's quite right in saying that you've got to take your opponent seriously, and he's doing that. And the way to do it is to focus on the people he's serving.
Rachel, Labour's clearly got a bit of a challenge in Tower Hamlets. Are they going to take your council off you?
Well, not if I can help it. No, I think, look, we're absolutely focused on local issues. I believe we've got a really strong record in Westminster of delivering really good services, clean streets, 3 waste collections every week.
Marble Arch
outstanding. Now. It brought 250,000 people back in. It helped.
Cost £6 million.
It helped protect our businesses, which provides so many jobs for our people in Westminster.
I assume you're not wearing green in tribute to the Mound.
I'm wearing green in tribute to St Patrick's Day, Simon. Of course.
But seriously, Labour are after your council. I mean, it's going to be a tough fight, isn't it?
Of course, they're always after our council. Look, there's always competition in these things, but we're standing on our local record, which we think is really strong. And we believe we deliver outstanding services, outstanding children's services, more spent on libraries than any other borough. And we're doing it all at the lowest council tax in the entire country. So we believe that at a time of real pressure in terms of cost of living, that we're delivering really good value.
I think I'm right in saying that both you, Steve, in Hammersmith and Fulham, and you, Rachel, in Westminster, have both frozen your council tax this year.
Yeah.
You're the odd man out, Andreas.
Yes, we increased the council tax not to the maximum, but by 1.99, 1% the social precept and 0.99 council tax.
Is that an Achilles heel for you?
Pardon?
Is that your Achilles heel?
It's not our Achilles heel, not at all. Kingston, most residents know the situation in Kingston. The problem is in 2010 we got 66 million revenue support grant, and that gradually has been removed from Kingston to 0 in 2018. Since 2018 we have not got any revenue support grant at all, whereas other London boroughs still get quite a decent amount of revenue support grant. And just this year we got revenue support grant again, but only £4,000. So we are 90% reliant on council tax and business rates, 75% council tax and 15% business rates. So for us, unfortunately, if we want to keep up the good service for our residents and keeping up everything what we are doing, we need our council tax. We are heavily reliant on it. So fairer funding from central government, if you look around, is something which we campaign for, which we would welcome. Also, what we would welcome would be more financial security. We are promised, not again just the annual settlement, we were promised a 3-year settlement from central government, but again, they call it 3-year settlement, but actually it's again provisional only for 1 year.
Is the Mayor's council tax hike £400 for the average bandy an election issue?
No, I think what the issue is that, you know, if you look in London, you've had child poverty at 37% of all children in London. Crime across the country has gone up, violent crime has gone up by 256%. And often when residents are concerned about those things, it's councils that are in the front line, either providing breakfast or providing meals outside of school term or putting extra police onto the streets and stuff like that. So since 2010, a third of central government funding has been removed from councils. So councils like Andreas's and many other across the capital, including the GLA, are struggling to hold together services. And I think that's what most people are doing in the sort of frontline fight to keep our society together.
Will Sadiq be on your election leaflets?
Well, we only ever put our candidates on our election leaflets,
so
I'm not even on our election leaflets. We have the candidates in each ward, and that's the way. I mean, that's the way we should campaign. We should vote for
Rachel,
people.
does Boris Johnson appear on your election leaflets?
No, but certainly Sadiq Khan doesn't, because actually in Westminster it is an issue, the 8.8% increase for our residents, because they're really concerned about the cost of living pressure, and they look at their council tax, and the increase is coming in terms of the GLA precept. So I think it is a concern, and our residents do notice it.
What are the issues in these elections? Low traffic neighbourhoods. They were introduced in the last few years. They've proved extremely popular among some people and extremely unpopular among others. Do you detect that people are going to use this election to vote in favour or against LTNs?
No, not so much. I mean, I think, you know, LTNs are essentially a way of cleaning London's air, and London's air is very, very toxic in many cases. In Hammersmith and Fulham, in one district where we don't have an LTN but we have a traffic scheme, we've taken a ton of carbon out per day and reduce traffic by 8,000. And that is very popular with residents. I think the big issue that people in London are concerned about is crime. That's what we get on the doorstep, and that's where I think Labour councils are stepping in, funding extra crime fighting resources, whether it's CCTV, extra people on the streets. That's the biggest issue Londoners are concerned about.
LTNs, you don't have them in Westminster?
No, we don't have them in Westminster, and that's because we want to make sure that we work with people, with our residents and our businesses to improve, to install things that actually work for them. We don't want to have things imposed on our residents with no consultation. So no, that's why we didn't impose any LTNs, and that's why there's the backlash in so many other areas, because they didn't listen to the residents, they didn't listen to their local businesses, and they've got problems with them.
Let's talk about the elections at a slightly more wider scale. Andreas, you the Lib Dems have got councils in Kingston, Richmond and Sutton. Can you break out of your southwest London corner?
I hope so, and I do think so. On many places we are on a good second place where we can improve, and I hope we improve. And back to the other question about the services, and Steve is right, in Kingston we have 55% of all our spend goes to children's service and adult social care. In Kingston we are quite proud for children's services and adult social care. We are in the top 3% of the whole country on these two services, which is great. So we want to keep delivering good services to our residents.
Before Ukraine, Rachel, there was a lot of talk that Boris Johnson was on parole until the outcome of these elections. If he loses Barnet or Westminster or Wandsworth, is he in big trouble?
Look, I think people are going to make up their minds, and obviously we've still got the report on the Downing Street events to come. But no, I think people are looking at the actual evidence of what he's done. You know, the vaccine programme, which was outstanding, and also this time through the Ukraine crisis, where he's actually showed, I think, real leadership in terms of calling for stronger sanctions, quite rightly.
Are you worried, Steve, that all that political capital you had over Partygate might have evaporated because of Ukraine?
I think people are really focused on issues. So Partygate is a factor because you had people hunkering down and staying in their homes, and you had the people who were setting the laws living a completely opulent, different type of life. But actually putting that to one side, what you've really got is people focused on who's going to be best at fighting crime, who's going to be best at holding society together, who's going to be best at giving children the best type of future. That's what's on the ticket in this spring's elections, and that's where I think Labour councils are going to score big.
And if Keir Starmer can't take Barnet, is he in trouble?
I think Keir's done an amazing job as the leader. I remember just how far we've come in such a short space of time. So no, I think Keir is going to go from strength to strength, and that's what we're seeing with Keir's Labour Party.
We did see this week an opinion poll, Rachel, that showed Labour 30 points ahead of the Conservatives across London.
Well, look, I think it's been well said that the only opinion poll that actually matters is the one on the election day. So May the 5th, we'll wait to see. And actually, I will take exception to Stephen. I think the Conservatives have got a really strong record, and that's why we'll continue to do well.
Andreas, can I turn to another subject that's a big issue at the moment?
If I could add to Partygate, which is interesting, and to Ukraine, I think people make a difference. You know, Ukraine is really a serious issue. Everybody is scared. It's for the first time in many people's lifetime a war more or less close to our door, at our doorstep, and people are really concerned and show compassion what's happening in Ukraine and the people in Ukraine. Many are happy to help and sign up to host or support, go on the sponsorship scheme for hosting refugees. You know, that's something different to Partygate. I think people make this distinction and see the failings of the government at the same time, then recognizing what's going on at the moment. And on my experience at the doorstep, I talk to Conservative voters who are really not happy with Boris Johnson and what he has done, and they're still Tory voters even complaining about him.
Yeah. You mentioned refugees there. Do all three of you worry that you're not going to get the support you need for the influx of refugees?
I think I certainly do, because that's been the record with both Afghan refugees and Syrian refugees before it. But we certainly, Labour councils, if you look, have stepped into the breach on that front. You know, the fact is, the government got this wrong. The British people are far more generous than they're predicting. You know, the Daily Mail raised £8 million in 3 days. Over 20,000 people registered to help within a very short space of time. So the British people are a big, generous people, and what the government needs to do is to recognise this is one of the biggest things happening in our lifetimes, and this is a time where we need to step up, as we have done at previous points in our history.
Rachel, Westminster's in a city, not a lot of people have spare rooms.
No. No, that's right. But we are well practiced in terms of having to make sure that we welcome people who are fleeing really difficult circumstances. So you mentioned the Afghan refugees. We have 900 that have been in Westminster in temporary accommodation, where we have been providing the support, working with the Home Office to make sure that they are safely and easily transitioned into permanent accommodation. And there have been many challenges. These are people like from Ukraine who have had to flee with very few belongings, extraordinarily difficult situations in their own countries. So we need to make sure that we've got the support there in order to help them to safely arrive in the UK.
One of the other issues thrown up by Ukraine, oligarchs. Do you know if you've got many in Kingston?
We have none in Kingston, no.
Which can't be said for you two, because Rachel, you obviously have oligarchs. We saw some demonstrations outside Oleg Deripaska's in Belgravia. And Steve, of course, you have a very famous oligarch in
Chelsea Football Club.
Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah, well, actually, I think what the Russia report said that Russian interference in British public life is the new norm. And that was 18 months ago. And that needs to be enacted. We do have oligarchs. It's polluting British society. It's certainly polluting the property market. And it's about time that we had a different economic model that put Britons first and not attracted money from overseas gangsters.
Do you think the Conservative Party needs to say we got it wrong with oligarchs?
Look, I really welcome the moves that Michael Gove is taking at pace to look at what we can do around this, because clearly, there are a number of Russians who live in this country, and we must be absolutely clear that what we're talking about is those few who are connected to Putin and have gained their money in an illegal or corrupt way, and those absolutely need to be sanctioned. And yes, in Westminster, I would welcome those people who are found to be in that category. Whatever measures Michael Gove is able to look at, I would welcome them.
Finally, can I just ask you a quick yes/no question? Are you all going to be smiling on May the 6th?
I always take elections very seriously. I hope so.
I hope so.
I hope so too. And on the oligarchs, I also wanted to add, it was the Lib Dems who...
Andres, I'm sorry, I'm afraid we've run out of time, which often happens. Thanks to my guests tonight, to Janet, Steve, Rachel and Andres. But before we go, if you've had a long week at work and tempted to sneak off for a nap, spare a thought for our politicians. Sleeping through his very own late debate was Lord Young of Norwood Green, caught apparently having a snooze in the House of Lords on Tuesday. It didn't go unnoticed and he was silenced.
This particular gene editing...
I'm afraid the noble lord was fast asleep for the entirety of the minister's opening speech. Well, I had to send a note to you in order to wake you up by the doorkeeper.
Bedtime for all of us. Good night and sleep well.